I'm 18 now, sitting beside a hospital bed, watching the heart monitor climb and fall like mountain peaks. The room smells of bleach and dying flowers. Someone's hand is cold in mine, but I won't tell you whose yet, not until you understand how we got here. It started 10 years ago, the day I found him crying. They tell me I have 72 hours, 3 days to find a match or everything ends. The doctors speak in hushed tones outside my door, and I catch words like rejection and complications and unlikely. But I have heard those words before. I survived them once already. On the table beside me sits a photograph, edges worn from handling. Colors faded, a black wolf with amber eyes. Wolfie. I didn't know then that saving him would cost us everything we had left. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Along with the city you're watching from now, let's continue with the story. Spring 2020, I was 8 years old, and I lived in a world made of silence. Not because I couldn't speak, the doctors said my vocal cords worked just fine. But words felt like stones in my throat, too heavy to lift. They called it selective mutism, which is a fancy way of saying I was too scared to talk to anyone except Grandma Sarah. And even with her, words came slowly, carefully, like I was rationing something precious. We lived in a log cabin at the edge of the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee, where the trees grew so thick you could walk for hours and never see Ski. Our nearest neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, lived 2 miles down a dirt road that turned to mud when it rained. The cabin had belonged to my grandfather before he died, and before that, to his father. The wood was old and honest, gaps between the logs stuffed with newspaper from decades past. When wind blew through, I could hear the house breathing. Grandma Sarah was 68, but her hands were still strong from years of work. She cleaned hotel rooms in town 5 days a week. Starting at 5 in the morning on weekends, she sold pies at the farmer's market, apple, cherry, pecan, and took in sewing work at night, mending clothes by lamplight because electricity cost too much if we used it after dark. I watched her count coins at the kitchen table, sorting them into piles: rent, medicine, food. There was never enough. The medicine pile was for me. I was born with a broken heart, not the metaphorical kind. The actual muscle in my chest had formed wrong. At 5 years old, I'd had surgery that left a scar running from my collarbone to my ribs, pink and raised like a mountain range. The kids at school called me Frankenstein girl. So I stopped going to school, and the district let Grandma homeschool me instead. My mother died the day I was born. She bled out before the doctors could save her. I never knew her face except in photographs, a young woman with dark hair and my same gray eyes. My father, Grandma's son-in-law, died 2 years ago in a logging accident. A tree fell the wrong way. That's all anyone ever said about it. The tree fell the wrong way. As if accidents were just bad luck, not grief that broke open and swallowed whole families. Grandma Sarah wasn't really my grandmother. She was my mother's mother. No blood relation to my father, but she took me in anyway. Family isn't always blood, she told me once. Sometimes it's just who stays. I spent my days drawing, animals mostly, deer, foxes, rabbits, creatures I saw in the forest. I filled notebooks with them, gave them names, imagined their lives. They were better company than people. Animals didn't laugh when you couldn't speak. They didn't call you broken. I didn't have friends. I didn't have anyone except Grandma Sarah and the forest. until the day I found Wolfie crying over his dead mother. It was late April when I heard the crying. I'd been walking in the forest that morning, sketchbook tucked under my arm, following a deer trail I knew by heart. Grandma Sarah had packed me a lunch, 2 peanut butter sandwiches and an apple, and told me to be back before dark. She trusted me in those woods. I knew which plants were poison, which berries you could eat, how to find north if the trail disappeared. The forest was the one place I felt like I could breathe. But that morning, something was wrong. The birds had gone quiet. Even the insects seemed to be holding still, waiting. That's when I heard a sound that didn't belong, high-pitched, desperate, crying, not human crying, animal crying. I followed the sound deeper into the restricted area, past the old no trespassing signs riddled with bullet holes. My heart, my broken, patched-together heart was beating too fast. I should have turned back, but something pulled me forward. The smell hit me first. Copper and rot, death. Then I saw her, a black wolf, huge and beautiful, lying in a pool of dried blood. Her leg was crushed in a steel trap, the kind poachers set illegally for deer. The trap's teeth had gone through fur and muscle, straight to bone. She'd bled out trying to free herself. Flies were already gathering. But it was what lay beside her that made me drop my sketchbook. A wolf pup, black as midnight, small enough to fit in my arms. He was alive, pressed against his mother's body, crying in a way that sounded almost human. His ribs showed through his thin fur. He'd been there at least a day, maybe longer, waiting for her to wake up. When he saw me, he didn't run. He just looked at me with eyes the color of amber, wet with tears I didn't know animals could cry, and made a sound that broke something open inside my chest. I knelt down slowly. My hands were shaking. The pup didn't move, didn't growl. He was too weak, too small, too heartbroken to be afraid. "It's okay," I whispered, the first words I'd spoken out loud in 3 days. "It's okay. I'm here." I reached out and touched his head. His fur was matted with dried blood, his mother's blood. He whimpered and pushed his face into my palm. In that moment, I understood him completely. He'd lost his mother. I'd lost mine. He was alone in a world that had turned cruel and cold. So was I. I knew what I had to do, even though I knew it was illegal. Sheriff Redfield had come to our school last year with a dead wolf in the back of his truck, warning us about dangerous predators. He'd said if anyone found a wolf, they should call authorities immediately. Never approach, never touch. Wolves killed livestock, attacked children, spread disease. But this wasn't a monster. This was a baby who'd watched his mother die. I took off my jacket and wrapped him carefully. He was heavier than I expected, maybe 8 pounds, and warm against my chest. When I stood up, my legs trembled. My heart was hammering, sending warning signals I'd learned to recognize. Slow down, rest, don't push too hard. But I couldn't leave him there to die beside his mother. The walk home took an hour, 2 miles through forest that suddenly felt endless. I had to stop 3 times to catch my breath, leaning against trees while my heart raced and skipped. The pup stayed quiet in my arms, his amber eyes watching my face. I talked to him the whole way, told him about Grandma Sarah, about our cabin, about how I couldn't talk to people, but I could talk to him. I told him about my mother dying, about my father dying, about how sometimes it felt like everyone I loved turned into ghosts. "But I won't let you die," I promised. "I won't let you be alone." By the time I saw our cabin through the trees, I'd already decided on his name, Wolfie. Simple and true. I didn't know then what it would cost us. I didn't know about the sheriff who'd been hunting wolves for 20 years. I didn't know about my Uncle Jake, or the foreclosure notice, or Grandma Sarah's secret illness. I didn't know that in exactly 3 months, everything would fall apart. All I knew was that I'd found someone who needed me as much as I needed him, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away. By the end of the first week, something extraordinary happened. Wolfie didn't just survive, he transformed. He went from 8 pounds to nearly 15, his ribs no longer jutting through black fur that now shone like silk in the sunlight. His amber eyes, which had been dull and glazed with death, burned bright with intelligence and curiosity. He followed me everywhere, a shadow made of midnight and devotion. But it was his intelligence that shocked us both. Within 3 days, he learned to sit. By the end of the week, he understood stay, come, quiet, and most importantly, hide. I'd say the word and snap my fingers, and he'd vanish into whatever space was closest, going so still you'd swear he'd turned to stone. The command that would save his life, though, was one I taught him on a whim after watching an old movie with Grandma Sarah. "Play dead," I whispered, tapping his side. He looked at me with those knowing eyes, tilted his head, then slowly lowered himself to the floor. His eyes closed. His breathing became so shallow I had to press my hand to his chest to feel it. He didn't move, didn't twitch, didn't even flicker an eyelid when I waved my hand over his face. "Good boy," I breathed, tears in my eyes. "Good boy. Wolfie." He'd learned it in one afternoon, as if he understood, on some primal level, that his survival depended on becoming invisible. Grandma Sarah was falling in love with him too, though she tried to hide it. I'd catch her slipping him bacon at breakfast, talking to him while she sewed at night. "You're a good boy," she'd murmur, her weathered fingers running through his fur. "Too good for this cruel world." At night, Wolfie slept in my bed, his warm body pressed against mine. When nightmares came, and they came often, dreams of my mother bleeding out, my father crushed under trees, he'd wake me with gentle licks to my face. He seemed to know when my heart was racing too fast, when I needed to calm down and breathe. For the first time since my father died, I felt whole. But our happiness was as fragile as spider silk. The yellow envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. I found it on the kitchen table. The words, "Final Notice," stamped in angry red letters. I couldn't stop myself from reading it, even though I knew I shouldn't. The bank wanted $5,000 in 60 days, or they'd take our house. $5,000. It might as well have been 5,000,000. That night, I heard Grandma Sarah crying in her room. Not the quiet tears she thought I couldn't hear, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I stood outside her door, one hand pressed to the wood, wanting to comfort her but not knowing how. That's when I noticed something else, something worse. There were bloody tissues in the bathroom trash, not just a little blood from a bitten tongue or bleeding gums. Real blood, bright and frightening. And when I pressed my ear to her door at night, I could hear her coughing, long, terrible fits that sounded like something tearing inside her chest. "Grandma," I said one evening, finding my voice, "are you sick?" She was at her sewing machine, Mending someone's torn jacket? She didn't look up. Just a colon baby. Nothing to worry about. But I was 8 years old. Not stupid. I knew what nothing to worry about meant. It meant everything to worry about. I started drawing obsessively. Sketch after sketch of Wolfie. A tourist at the farmer's market saw my work and offered $20 for a drawing, then 50, then 100 for a portrait of her dog. Every cent went to Grandma Sarah. It wasn't enough to save the house, but it helped. And it made me feel less like a burden, more like I was contributing something. Then Mrs. Patterson came knocking. I was upstairs with Wolfie when I heard her voice at the door. "Sarah, I heard howling last night. Sounded like a wolf." My blood went ice cold. I clamped my hand over Wolfie's muzzle, whispering quiet over and over until he understood. Grandma Sarah's voice floated up the stairs, calm as a summer morning. "Just coyotes, Martha. They've been coming down from the mountain." "That wasn't coyotes." "Sarah, I know what coyotes sound like. That was something bigger." "Well, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe your hearing aid needs new batteries." A long pause. Then Mrs. Patterson's voice, softer now. "Sarah, if you're in trouble, you can tell me. I can help." "We're fine, Martha, just fine." After she left, Grandma Sarah climbed the stairs slowly, one hand pressed to her chest. She found me sitting with Wolfie, both of us frozen like statues. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down heavily on my bed. Her breathing labored. "We have to be more careful," she said finally. "Sheriff Redfield has been asking questions around town about wild animals, about wolves." She looked at Wolfie, who had his head resting on my lap. "Martha's a good woman, but she talks. And if she talks to the wrong person—" Oh, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. That night, I had the nightmare again, the one where everyone I loved disappeared, turning to smoke and drifting away into nothing. I woke up gasping, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through. Wolfie was already awake, watching me with those amber eyes that seemed to hold centuries of understanding. He licked the tears from my face and pressed his body closer, as if he could hold me together through sheer proximity. "Don't leave me," I whispered into his fur. "Please, don't leave me too." He couldn't promise that. Nobody could. But for that moment, in the darkness of my room with my heart still racing and his warmth against my chest, I chose to believe he'd never go. I had to believe it, because if I lost him, I'd lose the last piece of myself that still knew how to hope. The first month with Wolfie changed everything. By mid-May, he doubled in size, going from 8 pounds to nearly 15. His ribs no longer showed through his fur, and his amber eyes had grown brighter, more alert. He was impossibly smart, smarter than any dog I'd ever seen. Within the first week, he learned to sit, stay, and come when called. By week 2, he understood quiet and hide, which would save his life more times than I could count. But the command that mattered most was, "Play dead." I'd seen it in a movie once. A dog who could lie completely still, eyes closed, not breathing. It seemed like a trick, something cute for parties. But I taught it to Wolfie with a desperation that made my hand shake. Because I knew people would come looking, I knew we couldn't hide him forever. He learned it in 3 days. When I said the words and snapped my fingers, he dropped to the ground, close his eyes, and go so still you'd swear he wasn't breathing. The first time he did it perfectly. I cried and hugged him so hard he squirmed. Grandma Sarah fell in love with him too, though she tried to hide it at first. I'd catch her slipping him pieces of bacon at breakfast, or talking to him while she sewed at night. "You're a good boy," she'd murmur, running her fingers through his black fur. "Too good for this world, probably." Wolfie slept in my bed, his warm body pressed against mine. When I had nightmares, and I had them often, dreams of my mother bleeding out, my father crushed under trees, Wolfie would wake me with gentle licks to my face. He seemed to know when my heart was racing too fast, when I needed to calm down and breathe. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. But happiness is expensive when you're poor. 60 days until foreclosure. That's what the letter said, the one that came in a yellow envelope with "Final Notice" stamped in red. I found it on the kitchen table one morning while Grandma Sarah was at work. The bank wanted $5,000 or they'd take our house. I didn't understand money the way adults did, but I understood that $5,000 might as well have been $5 million. We barely had enough for food each month. Grandma was already working herself to exhaustion. I could see it in the way she moved, slower each day, her breathing labored after climbing stairs. And there was something else, something she was hiding. I'd found bloody tissues in the bathroom trash, seen her wince when she thought I wasn't looking, pressing a hand to her chest, heard her coughing at night, long fits that sounded like something tearing inside her. "Grandma, are you sick?" I asked one evening. She was at the sewing machine, mending the torn jacket for a customer. She didn't look up. "Just a cold, baby. Nothing to worry about." But I was 8 years old, not stupid. Adults always said "nothing to worry about" when they meant the opposite. I started drawing more obsessively. Sketch after sketch of Wolfie sleeping, playing, watching the forest through the window. A tourist at the farmer's market saw my drawings and offered to buy one. $20, then $50 for a bigger one, then $100 for a portrait of her dog. I gave every cent to Grandma Sarah. It wasn't enough to save the house, but it helped, and it made me feel less like a burden. Then Mrs. Patterson came knocking. She was our nearest neighbor, a woman in her 70s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I heard her voice at the door one afternoon while I was upstairs with Wolfie. "Sarah, I heard howling last night. Sounded like a wolf." My blood went cold. I pressed my hand over Wolfie's muzzle, whispering quiet over and over. Grandma Sarah's voice floated up the stairs, calm as Sunday morning. "Just coyotes. Martha, they've been coming down from the mountain." That wasn't coyotes. I know what coyotes sound like. "Well, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe your hearing aid needs adjusting." A pause. Then Mrs. Patterson's voice, softer. "Sarah, if you're in trouble, you can tell me." "I'm fine, Martha. We're fine." After she left, Grandma Sarah climbed the stairs and found me sitting with Wolfie, both of us frozen. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down heavily on my bed. "We have to be more careful," she said finally. "Sheriff Redfield has been asking questions around town." My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? About wild animals? About wolves? She looked at Wolfie, who was resting his head on my lap. "Martha Patterson is a good woman, but she talks, and if she talks to the wrong person—" She didn't finish, She didn't have to. That night, I had the nightmare again. The one where I was standing in the forest and everyone I loved was disappearing, one by one, turning into smoke and drifting away. I woke up gasping, my heart slamming against my ribs. Wolfie was already awake, watching me with those amber eyes. He licked the tears from my face and pressed his body closer, as if he could hold me together through sheer proximity. "Don't leave me," I whispered into his fur. "Please don't leave me too." June brought heat and trouble in equal measure. Wolfie was 3 months old now, 30 pounds of muscle and wild instinct barely contained. He was too big to hide easily, too wolf-like to pass as a dog. When strangers came near the house, his hackles rose and a low growl rumbled in his chest. I had to work harder to keep him calm, to remind him that not everyone was a threat, but some people were. Sheriff Marcus Redfield showed up on a Tuesday morning. I watched from the upstairs window as his patrol car pulled into our driveway. He was a tall man, probably in his 60s, with a face like weathered stone and eyes that had forgotten how to smile. I grabbed Wolfie and ran for the cellar, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Play dead," I whispered frantically as I covered him with old blankets. "Play dead and don't move, no matter what." He obeyed perfectly, going completely still beneath the blankets. I climbed back upstairs, just as Grandma Sra opened the door. "Sheriff," she said, her voice steady, "what can I do for you?" "Mrs. Thornwood, got a report of a large canine on your property. Mind if I take a look around?" "I told you last month. Sheriff, we have a husky mix. Adopted him from a shelter over in Knoxville." "That right." Redfield's eyes swept past her, landing on me in the hallway. "Big dog for a little girl." "He's very gentle," Grandma Sarah said. "Good with children. Funny thing, shelter in Knoxville has no record of anyone named Thornwood adopting any animal in the past 6 months. He pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. "I have a warrant to search the premises." My hands went numb. Redfield walked through our house like he owned it, checking closets, looking under beds, opening cabinets. I followed him, silent and terrified, praying he wouldn't find the cellar door. He didn't. The door was hidden behind a shelf in the pantry, easy to miss if you didn't know it was there. But he found wolf hair on the couch, on my bedroom floor, long black strands that caught the light. He held one up, examining it. "Husky, you said he sheds," Grandma Sarah said. "Terrible in the summer." Redfield looked at her for a long moment. His face was unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or memory. "Mrs. Thornwood, I'm going to tell you something I don't tell many people. 20 years ago, I lost my son in these mountains, Ethan. He was 7 years old." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he'd told the story so many times it had worn smooth. "We were camping. He wandered off. By the time we found him, the wolves had—" He stopped. He was 7, same age as my stepdaughter, when I married his mother. "I'm sorry," Grandma Sarah said quietly. "I've killed 34 wolves since then. Every single one I could find." He looked at me again, and this time I saw it clearly, the grief that had calcified into rage. "I will not let it happen to another child, not in my county." He handed her a card. "You have 48 hours to register that dog with the animal control. If it's not registered by Thursday, I'm coming back. And if I find out you're harboring a wolf, he paused. Well, let's just say it won't end well for anyone. After he left, Grandma Sarah sank into a chair, her face gray. We have to let him go, she said. No. The word came out sharp, louder than I'd spoken in months. Lily, no. I was shouting now, something breaking open inside me. Everyone leaves, everyone dies or leaves, and I'm alone, and I can't. My heart was racing, skipping beats, sending shooting pains down my left arm. The room spun. Grandma Sarah caught me before I fell, easing me to the floor. Breathe, baby. Slow breaths, in through your nose, out through your mouth. But I couldn't breathe. I couldn't stop crying. 8 years of grief came pouring out for my mother who bled out, for my father crushed under a tree, for every lonely day in that cabin, for every kid at school who called me broken. If you make Wolfie go, I'll go too, I sobbed. I'll run away into the forest and you'll never find me. Lily, I mean it. I'd rather die with him than live without him. The words hung in the air between us, terrible and true. Grandma Sarah held me while I cried myself out. When I finally went quiet, exhausted, she said, 3 more days. That's all I'm promising. 3 days to figure something out. It wasn't enough, but it was all we had. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went down to the cellar where Wolfie was still hiding and climbed under the blankets with him. I won't let them take you, I whispered. I promise. He licked my face and settled his head on my chest, right over my scar. I could feel his heartbeat against mine, strong and steady. A rhythm that said, "You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone." I fell asleep like that, holding on to the only friend I'd ever had, while somewhere in the darkness, a man with a gun and a dead son's memory planned our destruction. The next morning, Grandma Sarah was coughing blood into the kitchen sink. "It's nothing," she said when she saw me staring. "Just bit my tongue." But we both knew she was lying, and I realized, with a cold certainty that made my chest ache, that I was going to lose her too. The only question was how much time we had left. July brought the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and the cicadas scream. It also brought the day everything fell apart. Wolfie was 4 months old and 45 pounds of barely contained wildness. He looked less like a dog every day. His muzzle was longer, his legs lankier, his eyes a strange amber that seemed to glow in certain light. When he moved through the forest, he moved like liquid shadow, utterly silent, utterly lethal. But with me, he was still gentle, still mine. I'd been taking him on walks deeper in the woods, away from the house, away from prying eyes. That's where we were when it happened. We were following a deer trail I'd walked 100 times. Wolfie was ahead of me, nose to the ground, tracking something I couldn't see. The July sun filtered through the leaves in golden shafts, and for a moment, just one perfect moment, I felt safe. Then Wolfie's ears went flat against his skull. He saw it before I did. The steel trap, half hidden under leaves, its jaws spread wide and waiting. I was about to step right into it, but everything happened in seconds. Wolfie lunged forward, hitting me sideways with his full body weight. I went sprawling into the underbrush as the trap snapped shut with a sound like breaking bones. On Wolfie's front left paw, his scream, and it was a scream, not a howl, tore through the forest. Birds exploded from the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a deer crashed through brush, fleeing. Wolfie! I scrambled to my feet, my own scream trapped in my throat. He was thrashing, trying to pull free, and the trap's teeth were sinking deeper with every movement. Blood was already pooling in the dirt, so much blood, dark and bright at the same time. Stop moving! I fell to my knees beside him, my hands shaking so badly I could barely function. Play dead, Wolfie, play dead somehow. Through the pain, he understood. He went still, panting, whimpering. But still, his amber eyes found mine, and in them I saw the same terror I'd felt the day I found him beside his mother. The trap was old, rusted, the kind that should have been illegal, but wasn't. Not really. Not when you lived in mountains where men made their own rules. I grabbed a thick branch and tried to pry the jaws open. Oh, they wouldn't budge. Please, I sobbed, pulling with all my strength. Please, please, please. My heart was hammering, sending warning signals through my chest, pain shooting down my arm, dizziness making the world tilt. I ignored it all. It took me 10 minutes of Wolfie whimpering and me crying and both of us bleeding before the trap finally gave. The jaws sprang open and Wolfie yanked his paw free. The damage was terrible. I could see bone. Torn flesh hung in ribbons, and blood was pulsing out in rhythm with his heartbeat. I tore off my shirt, wrapping it around his paw as tightly as I could, my hands slick with his blood. It's okay, I kept saying. Even though nothing was okay, it's okay. It's okay. Getting him home was a nightmare. He could barely walk, whimpering with each step, and I had to half carry him, his weight making my legs shake and my heart race dangerously. Every 50 feet I had to stop and rest, gasping, my vision going gray at the edges. Don't you dare die, I told him through gritted teeth. Don't you dare leave me. It took us an hour to cover a mile. When we finally reached the cabin, Grandma Sarah was in the garden. She saw us coming, me covered in blood, Wolfie limping, both of us crying, and her face went white. Oh, God! Oh, Jesus Christ! She ran to us, her hands fluttering over Wolfie's injured paw. What happened? Trap, I gasped. Steel trap! He saved me! He pushed me out of the way! Grandma Sarah was already moving, helping me get Wolfie into the house. We laid him on the kitchen floor, and she unwrapped the blood-soaked shirt. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. We have to take him to a vet, I said. We can't. They'll report him. Then he'll die. Lily. She pressed her hands over her face. When she dropped them, I saw tears on her cheeks. I can try to stitch it, but I don't know if... Then try. I was shaking, my whole body vibrating with fear and adrenaline. Please, Grandma, please. She tried. For 3 hours, she worked with needle and thread, cleaning the wound with whiskey and stitching torn flesh back together while Wolfie whimpered and I held his head in my lap, whispering promises I had no right to make. You're going to be okay. I promise. You're going to be okay. But promises are just words, and words can't stop infection. For the next 3 days, I didn't leave Wolfie's side. I slept on the kitchen floor next to him, waking every time he whimpered. His paw was hot to the touch, swollen and angry red. Grandma Sarah used the last of her prescription antibiotics medicine she needed for her own lungs to fight the infection. "Why are you giving him your medicine?" I asked. "Because I'm old and he's young," she said simply, "and because you love him." On the third night, Wolfie's fever broke, his breathing steadied, the swelling went down. He was going to live. But we weren't safe, not even close, because Sheriff Redfield had found the trap, had found the blood trail, had followed it to within a quarter-mile of our house before losing it in the creek, and he'd set up a hidden camera. I found out about the camera from Mrs. Patterson, who'd heard about it from her nephew who worked in Redfield's office. She came to the house one afternoon while Grandma Sarah was at work, her face grave. "Sarah needs to know," she told me. "The camera's in the oak tree at the edge of your property. Been there for a week. If that animal goes outside, Redfield will see him. Why are you telling me this?" My voice was barely a whisper. She looked at me for a long moment. "Because 20 years ago, I had a daughter. She had a dog that meant the world to her. When the dog got sick, we couldn't afford the vet. It died in her arms." She paused. "My daughter killed herself 3 months later, hanged herself in the barn. She was 15. I felt the blood drain from my face. I'm not saying a wolf is the same as a dog, or that you'll do what she did, but I am to saying that sometimes what looks dangerous from the outside is the only thing keeping someone alive." She handed me a piece of paper with an address. "This woman, Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, she's a wildlife biologist at the university. She helps with cases like yours. Might be she can do something." After she left, I called the number. My hands were shaking so badly I had to dial 3 times. Dr. Hayes answered on the second ring. I explained everything: the trap, the blood, Wolfie's injury, Sheriff Redfield's vendetta. "How old is the wolf?" she asked. 4 months. "And you say he's pure black?" "Yes, with amber eyes that sometimes look red in certain light." A pause. Then, "I need to see him. Can you bring him to the university?" "We can't. There's a camera. If we leave with him, the sheriff will know." Another pause. "Then I'll come to you tonight and bring something for a DNA test." "Why DNA?" "Because if your wolf is what I think he might be, the law protects him, and Sheriff Redfield can't touch him." Hope flickered in my chest, painful and desperate. "What do you think he—" "I'll know when I see him." That night, Dux Hayes arrived in an unmarked car after dark. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. Wolfie growled when she entered, positioning himself between us. "Easy," I murmured. "She's here to help." Dot Hayes knelt slowly, holding out her hand. Wolfie sniffed it, then surprisingly licked her fingers. "May I examine him?" I nodded. She spent 20 minutes checking him over: his teeth, his paws, his eyes, his injured leg. She took photos, measurements, and finally a swab of saliva for DNA testing. I need 3 days to run the full panel, she said, but preliminary. This isn't a gray wolf. Look at the facial structure, the ear placement, the bone density. She looked up at me. I think you found something extraordinary. Or possibly a hybrid of eastern timber wolf and red wolf. Is that good? It's miraculous. Eastern timber wolves have been extinct in Tennessee since the early 200s. Red wolves are critically endangered, fewer than 20 left in the wild. She stood. If his DNA confirms what I think, he's protected under federal law. Redfield would be committing a federal crime if he harmed him. 3 days, I repeated. Can we hide him for 3 days? You'll have to. After she left, I sat with Wolfie in the darkness, my arm around his neck. 3 days? I whispered. We can do 3 days. But I was wrong, because the next morning, Sheriff Redfield arrived with 5 deputies, a wildlife control officer, and a warrant for Grandma Sarah's arrest. And this time, he'd brought guns. They came at dawn. I woke to the sound of vehicles in our driveway, not 1, but 5. Through my bedroom window, I saw Sheriff Redfield stepping out of his patrol car, followed by deputies with hands resting on their holsters. A white van with wildlife control painted on the side pulled up behind them. My blood turned to ice. "Grandma!" I screamed, running to her room. She was already awake, already dressed, standing at her window with her hand pressed to her chest. When she turned to look at me, her face was gray and her breathing labored. "Take Wolfie to the cellar," she said quietly. "Now." I ran. Wolfie was already on his feet, sensing danger, his injured paw barely slowing him down. "Come," I hissed. And he followed me down the stairs, through the kitchen, to the hidden cellar door. "Play dead," I commanded, throwing blankets over him. "Don't move. Don't make a sound. No matter what you hear." His amber eyes met mine one last time before I covered his face. The pounding on the front door shook the whole house. "Mrs. Sarah Thornwood, open up. We have a warrant." Grandma Sarah moved slowly down the stairs, one hand on the railing, the other pressed to her ribs. I wanted to help her, but I was frozen in the kitchen, my heart slamming against my chest so hard I could feel it in my throat. She opened the door. Redfield stood on the porch, warrant in hand. Behind him, deputies fanned out across our property. The wildlife control officer, a thin man with a tranquilizer rifle, stayed by the van. "Mrs. Thornwood, I have a warrant to search this property and seize any illegal wildlife." Redfield's voice was flat, professional, "and a warrant for your arrest on charges of harboring a dangerous animal." "There's no wolf here," Grandma Sarah said. Her voice was steady, but I could see her hand shaking. "Hidden camera says otherwise. We have footage from 3 nights ago. Large canine, approximately 40 pounds, black coat, exiting your back door at 2 a.m. He pushed past her into the house. "Search every room, basement, attic, outbuildings. If it's here, I want it found." They tore through our house like locusts, overturned furniture, emptied closets, checked under beds. I stood in the kitchen, silent and terrified, while boots thundered overhead and men shouted to each other. One deputy opened the pantry. My heart stopped, but he didn't see the hidden door behind the shelf, didn't think to look. After 20 minutes, Redfield came back downstairs, his face tight with frustration. "Nothing," a deputy reported. "No animal anywhere on the property." "That's because there isn't one," Grandma Sarah said. Redfield stared at her. "Where is it? I don't know what you're talking about." We have video evidence of what? A stray dog? A coyote? She crossed her arms. You're harassing an old woman over nothing. Sheriff? His jaw clenched. Mrs. Thornwood? I'm trying to save lives here. 20 years ago, my son— I know about your son, she interrupted, and her voice softened. I'm sorry for your loss, Marcus. Truly, but terrorizing my family won't bring him back. Something flickered across his face. Pain, old and deep and never healed. Then it hardened again. Spread out, he told his deputies. Search the woods. Check the neighbors' properties. It's here somewhere. That's when my Uncle Jake's truck pulled into the driveway. I hadn't seen Jake in almost a year. He was Grandma Sarah's biological son, my mother's brother, a man who drifted in and out of our lives like smoke. He looked terrible thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and the jittery energy of someone who hadn't slept in days. Ma, he said, climbing out, what's going on? Jake, Grandma Sarah's voice was tight. This isn't a good time. I heard Redfield was coming. He looked at the sheriff. Called in a tip myself about a week ago. Figured it was time someone did something. The world tilted. You what? Grandma Sarah's voice was barely audible. I told him about the wolf. Jake wouldn't meet her eyes. Ma, you can't harbor a wild animal. It's illegal. Someone's gonna get hurt. You son of a bitch. The words came from my mouth, loud and clear and full of venom I didn't know I had. You did this. You called them. Jake finally looked at me. Lily, you don't understand. I need the house. You want us to lose the house. Understanding crashed over me like cold water. If Grandma gets arrested, you inherit everything. You can sell it, pay off your debts. His face went red. That's not— How much do you owe, Jake? Grandma Sarah asked quietly, How much am I worth to you? 80,000, he whispered. To some very bad people. Ma, they're threatening my kids, my family. I didn't know what else to do. So you destroy ours. She shook her head. Get out. Ma, get out of my house. You're no son of mine. Jake stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then he turned and walked away, climbed into his truck, and drove off without another word. Redfield was watching all of this with an unreadable expression. Finally, he said, Mrs. Thornwood, I'm going to give you one chance. Tell me where the wolf is. Surrender it voluntarily, and I'll drop the arrest warrant. Otherwise— That's when Grandma Sarah's knees buckled. She went down hard, clutching her chest, gasping for air. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Grandma, I screamed, running to her. Someone call an ambulance. A deputy shouted. Everything dissolved into chaos. Radios crackling, men running, Redfield barking orders. In the confusion, no one was watching me. I ran to the cellar, threw open the door, uncovered Wolfie. We have to go, I whispered. Now. But it was already too late. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours while I knelt on the kitchen floor, holding Grandma Sarah's hand, watching her struggle to breathe. Blood stained her lips. Her eyes were unfocused, rolling back in her head. The deputies had cleared out of the house. giving the paramedics room. But Redfield remained, standing in the corner with his arms crossed, watching. "Please," I begged him, "please just go. Leave us alone." He didn't move. The paramedics loaded Grandma Sarah onto a stretcher. One of them, a young woman with kind eyes, knelt beside me. "Are you family? I'm her granddaughter. Is there another adult, someone who can ride with her?" I shook my head. Jake was gone. There was nobody else. "She'll go to Regional Medical Center in Knoxville," the paramedic said, gently. "You can follow in a car, or I'm coming with her." "Honey, you can't do it. There's not enough room in the ambulance, and I'm coming with her." My voice cracked. "She's all I have." The paramedic looked at her partner, who shrugged. "Let the kid come." As they wheeled Grandma Sarah out, I frantically tried to figure out what to do about Wolfie. I couldn't leave him in the cellar, he'd starve, but I couldn't take him with me. And I couldn't trust anyone in this town except Mrs. Patterson. I turned to Redfield. "Please call Mrs. Patterson. She lives 2 miles down the road. She can watch the house while I'm gone." Redfield studied me for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded to a deputy. "Make the call." Mrs. Patterson arrived as they were loading Grandma Sarah into the ambulance. I pulled her aside, whispering urgently. "Wolfie's in the cellar, behind the pantry shelf. There's food in the old refrigerator down there. Please." "I'll take care of him," she promised. "You go be with your grandmother." The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and roar. Grandma Sarah was unconscious, oxygen mask over her face, the paramedics doing things with IVs and monitors that I didn't understand. I sat in the corner, small and useless, watching the numbers on the machines spike and fall. At the hospital, they rushed her into emergency surgery. A nurse tried to explain what was happening. Something about internal bleeding, ruptured blood vessels, stage 4 lung cancer that had spread to her liver, but the words just washed over me like noise. "Stage 4. I repeated, "She has cancer." The nurse's face softened. "She didn't tell you?" I shook my head, numb. "Honey, she's been sick for months, maybe longer." The waiting room became my world. White walls, uncomfortable chairs, a TV playing news no one watched. Hours passed, then more hours. A social worker came and asked me questions. Where were my parents? Did I have other family? Where would I go if Grandma Sarah didn't make it? "She'll make it," I said. "She has to." But I didn't believe it. Jake showed up around midnight, looking like he'd been crying. He sat down next to me, and for a long time neither of us spoke. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "Jesus Christ, Lily, I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. I don't know what I thought. That if I could just get some money, but everything would be okay. My kids, they're in danger. Because of me? Because I was stupid and gambled away everything? And these people, they don't make empty threats. He put his head in his hands. "But she's my mother, and you're my niece. And I almost got you both killed for money I don't even have any more." "Where's the money now?" I asked quietly. "Gone. I lost it 2 days after I borrowed it. Been losing ever since." He laughed, a broken sound. "I'm good at that. Losing?" A doctor emerged from the surgery wing, still in scrubs, looking exhausted. Jake and I both stood. "Family of Sarah Thornwood." "That's us," Jake said. The doctor's expression told us everything before he spoke. She survived the surgery, but the cancer is extensive. It spread to her liver, her bones, her lymph nodes. Even with aggressive treatment, we're looking at weeks, maybe a month. The floor seemed to drop away beneath me. Without treatment? Jake asked. Days. Jake nodded slowly. Can we see her? She's in recovery. Give it an hour. After the doctor left, Jake turned to me. Lily, I need to tell you something. I'm selling my house, the one I own outright, the one I was supposed to raise my kids in. I'm selling it, and the money, all of it, goes to you. What? For your medical bills? For your heart? I know you need a transplant eventually. This way, you'll have the money when the time comes. He wiped his eyes. It's what Dad would have wanted, what Mom wants, and it's the least I can do. After everything, I wanted to hate him. Part of me did hate him, but another part, the part that remembered being small and riding on his shoulders before gambling and debt, turned him into someone else, just felt sad. What about your kids? I'll figure it out. Get a second job. Stop being a coward. He managed a weak smile. Maybe start being the man my father thought I could be. When they finally let us see Grandma Sarah, she looked so small in the hospital bed. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed. Her eyes opened when we entered, focused on me. Lily, she whispered, you're okay? I'm okay. I took her hand. Wolfie's okay, too. Mrs. Patterson has him. Relief washed over her face. Good. That's good. Ma, Jake said, his voice thick, I'm sorry for everything. I was scared and stupid, and I know. She squeezed his hand. I forgive you. Your father would want me to, and I'm too tired to hold grudges. We sat with her for an hour, not talking much, just being together. Eventually, a nurse came and said visiting hours were over. We'd have to come back in the morning. As we were leaving, Grandma Sarah called me back. Lily, promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't let them put Wolfie down. He saved you. You save him. Her grip on my hand was surprisingly strong. Promise. I promise. But I didn't know if it was a promise I could keep, because when we walked out of the hospital, Sheriff Redfield was waiting in the parking lot, and standing next to him was Dr. Hayes, holding a manila folder. Miss Thornwood, Redfield said formally, we need to talk about your wolf. My heart sank. This was it. They were going to take him, kill him, and there was nothing I could do. Then Dr. Hayes opened the folder and pulled out a sheet of paper covered in numbers and graphs I didn't understand. The DNA results came back early, she said, and you're not going to believe what we found. Dr. Hayes spread the papers across the hood of her car under the parking lot lights. Jake stood beside me, one hand on my shoulder, as she pointed to charts and graphs that looked like a foreign language. Your wolf, Wolfie, is a hybrid, she began, but not just any hybrid. He's a cross between an eastern timber wolf and a red wolf. Both species are either extinct or critically endangered in the wild. Redfield's arms were crossed, his face unreadable. So, Sheriff, under the Endangered Species Act of 1903, any animal carrying genetic material from an endangered species is federally protected. Killing him would be a federal crime, punishable by up to a year in prison and a $50,000 fine. The silence that followed was deafening. "You're saying I can't put it down," Redfield said flatly. "I'm saying if you try, I'll have federal wildlife agents here within the hour." Hayes's voice was calm but firm. "This animal is scientifically invaluable. He may be the only living hybrid of these two subspecies. His genetic material could help save both populations from extinction. I found my voice. Does that mean we can keep him?" Hayes's expression softened. "No, honey. It means he needs to go to a specialized facility where he can be properly cared for and, potentially, part of a breeding program. There's a sanctuary in Kentucky that—" "No." The word came out sharp. "He's mine. He saved my life. He's family." "Lily," Jake said quietly, "listen to what she's saying. I don't care. They can't take him. They can't." My voice broke. My heart was racing again, that familiar pain shooting down my arm. First my mom, then my dad, then Grandma's dying. And now you want to take Wolfie too? No. No! I was crying, gasping for air, my chest tightening. Jake caught me as my knees buckled, lowering me to sit on the curb. "Breathe," he kept saying. "Just breathe, Lily." But breathing hurt. Everything hurt. Redfield was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Finally, he spoke. 20 years ago, my son died in these mountains. His name was Ethan. He was 7 years old. His voice was rough, like speaking through gravel. We were camping. He wandered off, chasing what he thought was a dog, found his body 2 days later near a wolf den. The medical examiner said. He stopped, swallowed hard, said the wolves had been at him. I stared at him through my tears. I've spent 20 years hunting wolves, killed 34 of them, told myself I was protecting people. Making the mountains safe? He looked at his hands. But the truth is, I was just trying to kill the thing. I couldn't kill the guilt, the failure. I was his stepfather, and I couldn't protect him. Dr. Hayes was watching him carefully. "Sheriff Redfield, I'm not finished." He looked at me. 3 hours ago, I watched your grandmother collapse, watched you scream for her, and I saw myself 20 years ago screaming for Ethan. His voice cracked. I've been wrong. About wolves, about what they are, about what happened to my son. What do you mean? I whispered. I got the full autopsy report 5 years after Ethan died. Finally worked up the courage to read it. The wolves didn't kill him. He rubbed his eyes. He died from a snake bite. Copperhead. He must have stumbled into the wolf den trying to find help. And the mother wolf, she was just protecting her pups. But I was so angry, so destroyed, I needed something to blame. So I blamed wolves. I've been murdering innocent animals for 20 years because I couldn't face the truth. The parking lot was silent, except for the hum of street lights and distant traffic. That wolf you found," Redfield continued, looking at me. "He protected you, pushed you out of the way of that trap, nearly lost his leg saving you. That's not a monster. That's—" His voice broke completely. "That's what love looks like. Jake's hand tightened on my shoulder. Duh. Hayes cleared her throat. There might be a solution. It's unconventional. But given the circumstances, she looked at Redfield. The sanctuary in Kentucky has a visitation program. Families who've helped rescue endangered animals can visit once a month. Lily could see Wolfie regularly. And when she's older, if she pursues a career in wildlife biology or conservation, she could even work at the facility. He wouldn't be wild, Piss, I said. He'd be in a cage. Not a cage. 100 acres of natural forest habitat with other wolves, learning to be what he was meant to be. Dirt. Hayes knelt in front of me. Lily, keeping him in your house isn't love. It's fear. Love is giving him the chance to live a full life, even if it means letting him go. The words hit me like a physical blow because I knew God. I knew she was right. Can I say goodbye? My voice was barely audible. Of course. Redfield drove us back to the cabin. The ride was silent, all of us lost in our own thoughts. When we pulled up, Mrs. Patterson was sitting on the porch, waiting. He's been good as gold, she said. Been worried sick about you, though keeps pacing and whining. And I went down to the cellar alone. Wolfie was lying in the corner, head on his paws. But when he saw me, he leapt up and bounded over, nearly knocking me down. He licked my face frantically, whining, checking me over with his nose to make sure I was okay. I'm here, I whispered, wrapping my arms around his neck. I'm here. We sat like that for a long time, me crying into his fur, him pressing close like he could hold me together through proximity alone. You have to go, I finally said, to a place where you can be with other wolves, where you can run and hunt and be free, where you can have a family. My voice broke. A real family, not just a broken girl in a falling-apart house. Wolfie whined, licking the tears from my cheeks. But I'll visit, I promise. Every month I'll come to see you, and maybe someday I'll work there. Take care of wolves like you. Save them like you saved me. I pressed my forehead against his. You taught me something, Wolfie. You taught me that love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go. The words were Grandma Sarah's, spoken to me 100 times in 100 different ways. Now I finally understood them. Hayes came down after a while. We should go soon. It's a 3-hour drive to the sanctuary, and they're expecting us. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Getting Wolfie into Dr. Hayes' van was harder than I expected. He didn't want to leave me, kept pulling back toward the house, toward me. Finally, I had to use the command, "Go," I said firmly, pointing to the van. "Go, Wolfie." He looked at me with those amber eyes that had seen his mother die, that had watched me cry myself to sleep, that had reflected moonlight on 100 nights when we were both just lonely creatures, finding comfort in each other. Then he jumped into the van. I rode in the back with him, one hand buried in his fur, memorizing the feel of him. Jake followed in his truck with Mrs. Patterson. Redfield came too, though I wasn't sure why, until we arrived at the sanctuary. The facility was beautiful rolling hills, dense forest, high fences designed to keep the wolves safe, not imprisoned. The director, a woman named Rachel, greeted us warmly. "We've been preparing a space for him," she said. "He'll be introduced gradually to a young female wolf named Luna. If they bond, well, she smiled. We might have pups in a year or two, pups that could help save an entire species. They took Wolfie to a transition area, a smaller enclosure where he could adjust. I stood at the fence, watching him explore, sniffing everything, marking territory. He'll be happy here, Rachel said gently. I know. And I did know, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. Redfield stepped up beside me. I've been thinking about what you said to Hayes, about Lily maybe working here someday. He pulled out a checkbook. How much does it cost to sponsor an animal to help fund this place? Dr. Hayes blinked. Sponsorships start at $1,000 annually, but put me down for $5,000. He started writing, and I'll be back next month with another check. Consider it, his voice roughened, consider it my apology. To every wolf I killed, and to my son, who deserved a better father than the one he got. He handed the check to Rachel, then walked away quickly, shoulders shaking. Jake was next. I'm selling my house. The money goes to Lily for medical bills. But whatever's left, if there's anything left, it goes here, too, to keep Wolfie safe and fed and happy. I looked at my uncle, this man who'd betrayed us, and then tried to make it right. And I saw someone I recognized, someone broken and trying to heal, just like me. Thank you, I whispered, as the sun started to set. Rachel told us visiting hours were over. We'd have to come back in a month, once Wolfie was fully settled. I pressed my hand against the fence one last time. Wolfie was across the enclosure, exploring. He looked back at me, and for a moment our eyes met. I love you, I said, even though he couldn't hear me. Thank you for everything. Then Jake put his arm around my shoulders, and we walked back to the truck. The hospital called while we were driving. Grandma Sarah had woken up and was asking for me. We drove through the night, the three of us, me, Jake, and Mrs. Patterson, united by loss and hope, and the strange way broken things sometimes heal when they're pressed together. When we reached the hospital, the sky was turning pink with the dawn. Grandma Sarah was awake, propped up in bed, looking impossibly frail, but somehow peaceful. Did you let him go? She asked. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Good girl, she smiled. That's love, baby, real love, the kind that sets things free. She died 3 days later, holding my hand, with Jake on her other side. Her last words were, You're going to be okay, both of you. You're going to be just fine. 10 years have passed since that summer when everything fell apart and came back together in ways I never expected. I'm 18 now, sitting in this hospital room again, waiting for another heart transplant because the first one is failing. But this time, I'm not afraid. Grandma Sarah taught me that love isn't measured in years, but in moments of courage, the moment she chose to let me keep Wolfie, despite the danger, the moment I chose to let him go so he could be free, the moment Jake chose to come back and be family again. Sheriff Redfield visits me every month, brings photos of Wolfie and his mate Luna and their 3 pups. He's different now, softer, like forgiveness gave him permission to be human again. Patterson still brings me pie. Jake hasn't gambled in 10 years, and his kids call me Aunt Lily. I have been accepted to study wildlife biology, and the sanctuary has already offered me an internship. Wolfie is alive and thriving, and somewhere in these mountains, His children are learning to howl at the moon. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Sometimes letting go is the bravest thing we'll ever do. What's something you had to let go of that changed your life? Have you ever received an unexpected gift from saying goodbye? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your words matter more than you know.